All right, you guys, welcome back to another episode of Car Talk, where we talk about everything related to cars, the scene, the industry, and the culture. I'm your host, Big Mike, right here with,
Ryan Bossery from Rywire.
and today we're going to talk about the stories, car stories. Every one of us reminisces. I mean, it could have been something that happened last weekend or something that happened 10 years ago. But all of us have the stories, the car stories that we love to reminisce about and talk about. And that's what we're going to do. In a previous episode, Ryan, we were talking about some things, and we talked about that first swap you did,
Right.
which you said it was a B16, but it ended up being a GSR.
Well, okay, sorry. What I meant with that was
Okay.
that there was two separate engines that I did, and there was
On the same car.
one swap I did at my house,
Yes.
and one swap I did at a different location.
Okay, so I remember something about that.
Mhm.
So why don't you go tell us about that? You did that swap where?
Okay, the first swap I ever did
Yes.
was a B16 swap,
Yes.
and I did that at my college, actually.
Okay.
So I was
Did
at...
they know?
Yes, okay. So Monterey Peninsula College at the time had a kind of like workshop where there was one class they offered where you could bring in your car and just do like whatever you want to it as like kind of like an open shop time.
Okay.
And then they had another course where you actually learn about cars. So I didn't really know what I was doing at that time, and I'm just trying to like fill credits. It was a junior college 2-year, and I'm like, I heard that the teacher was actually a Honda technician.
Okay.
So
you mean
I'm-
at the dealer?
No, like at the school, the teacher,
Yes.
he was actually a Honda tech, a retired
retired
Honda
one,
tech,
okay.
like master tech.
I thought
right?
when you said, I thought you meant like present tense, so he teaches and then goes to the dealership to
Right.
like wrench.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that was just his only thing. So yeah, I heard about this guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, if these classes are available and I need the credits,
Yeah.
then I'm just gonna do it. Because I was going to school for business of some sort.
Yes.
I wasn't like, I don't know anything I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do business, but I can fill like PE style credits
Sure.
with auto shop, and I'm like, fuck it, might as well, right?
Yeah.
So I signed up for these courses, got in, made sure that the professor was the Honda Tech guy, and he was a Honda technician. And the first class, I'm like really passionate and kind of like talk to him after class, and I'm like, I have this idea, I want to do like this engine swap. And he goes, okay. And he's like, I saw that you're also signed up for the general repair course.
Okay.
So you basically have every day you can come to the shop. So like if one of them is 2 days a week, the other one's 2 days a week.
Yeah.
And it's 2 or 3. So it's like you get 4 or 5 days available at shop. And I said, I want to do an engine swap.
Yeah.
And he sort of knew, like, he's like, oh yeah, B16A, like I know what that is.
Okay.
And
And what year is this for reference?
Okay, so this is, I thought about it, and I believe that this was 99 or 2000.
Okay.
Sorry, it was 2000.
So 20 years ago.
It was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So I'm like just starting college, right? And he said, okay, well, get an engine and let's do a swap. And
you get credit for this.
Yeah, he's like, you don't have to do the book work. He's like, you can take the tests if you want, but a lot of these people, mind you, don't know anything about cars. And I'm not saying that I did, but I was into Hondas.
Yeah.
I knew I had the desire to do a swap.
Yeah.
And there was actually one other guy that same thing. He had a Volkswagen Rabbit and he wanted to do a swap.
Sure.
So the teacher, his name was William Powers.
Okay.
And I made a nickname for him. I'll talk about it later. But so Will was like super cool guy, and he's just like, Ryan, you do a swap. And I'm like, well, I don't know how to get an engine. He's like, well, figure it out.
Yes.
So then I talked to Steve at H Motors.
Yeah.
Right.
20 years ago.
Yeah. Hit up Steve. His shop was right by where my cousin lived in Chatsworth.
Yeah.
On Devonshire, right? So then I hit up Steve and I'm like, Steve, I'm gonna come down. I wanna, buy this engine. I'm coming all the way from Northern California. I wanna get this engine. Hopefully you have one for me. Yeah, come down, right?
Okay.
So then I remember like going there and it was like Steve. I didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
He looked like just this
Person.
young.
Yeah, he was
Mexican,
young when he started.
He looked like
that.
a worker.
Yeah, when he
Like
started.
I'm not
that,
trying
he
to
was
be like
young,
a certain
man.
way, but I'm looking out and it's like, oh, all these dudes are like wrenching on things
Yeah.
and stuff, and I'm just like, hey, is Steve here? Yeah, I'm Steve. Oh, hey, you're Steve? Yeah, I'm Steve, right? Okay, cool. And he's like, I'm like, I need to get a B16, da da da. Oh yeah, you called from the Bay Area. All right, there's your engine right there. I'm like, are you sure it's good? You know, like you're doing the whole thing. Like I'm like young and I don't know.
Yeah, of course.
Are you selling me crap? Are you selling me something good? So he sold me an awesome engine.
Yeah.
Brought it all the way up. I'm like, look, Will, my teacher, I'm gonna do the swap. So he's like, all right, cool. Just start pulling the engine out. And I'm just like, oh shit, you know, like I'm just starting to. He's like, you got another car? I'm like, no. He's like, you need to get another car. So I bought a EF SI hatchback in teal green one. I bought it off one of my buddies that kind of like, it was his high school car. It was like slammed and stuff. It was pretty cool. But he was over it. He wanted to do like a Volkswagen bus and all this stuff.
Okay.
So he sold me the EF hatch. So then I had the EF hatch, I had the CRX, did the swap. And I was driving the hatch around. It had engine problems and everything, but whatever, like it ran, you know, got me to school. And then throughout the whole semester, I did the swap.
Okay.
Pulled the engine out, put the other one in. I was like documenting it. I had a website, and my handle on like on Honda Tech was dropped CRXSI, and I actually had it was like a GeoCities / dropped CRXSI / engine swap or some shit. And it was like step by step how to do a B16 swap. And I built that website.
Dude, you said GeoCities.
I think it was GeoCities. Yeah.
Do any of you guys remember GeoCities? That is a throwback. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So I made this like kind of a blog page.
Yeah.
Doing the whole swap and everything. What axles I used, how I did this, how I did that. The car was an SI, so I didn't have to do like crazy wiring. You like add 4 wires for your OBDO.
And you literally just had to figure this out.
Yeah, there was.
I mean, did the teacher help? Did the other students help?
The teacher, he didn't know anything about the swap. So meaning he didn't know what axles to use. He didn't know what mount brackets I needed.
Sure.
But he physically knew how to work on the car.
Of course, yeah.
So like pulling the engine took like quick because I'm just like, yo, what do I do next? He's like, you want to take out that pin and you want to get those knuckles off. And like he showed me, you know how when we take the lower arms off the ball joints, I just get out that big breaker bar, get it just right and just pull up.
Yes.
And it's not pushing, it's literally, I just yank up, right? He's the one that showed me that.
Dude.
And I don't do it any other way.
You use the breaker bar.
I use the breaker bar, I flip it upside down so the point's like
at
your face, and then I just go wham, right? And it pops off like almost every single time.
Yeah. I mean, I like that better than the hammer.
Yeah, like hitting it in the right spot and thinking that it's just gonna like unseat itself. I don't know. But like, so there's tricks like that he showed me. He's the one that showed me, oh, use an AC bolt to take out the pin. Right? So I always had AC bolts. Just like all these AC bolts that are just dedicated to like the bitch pin removal tool.
Sure.
So he showed me all that kind of stuff. So I was like, this guy is pretty dope, you know? He's legit. We got the engine in. Because it was an OBD0 B16 and the CRX was an OBD0 CRX, I got the right, just by default, you get the right brackets, you get like all that stuff is right.
Yeah.
And then the Hasport mounts just go right in. And then, you know, I bought like random Hasport shift linkage, Hasport mounts, Hasport whatever I could. So because Brian had been doing a lot of swaps, he already had parts available. So it wasn't like I didn't know at all what to assume.
Okay.
But I was able to like go to the certain people that I know that were the professionals and be like, you know, I was able to cross out parts off my list and then go, okay, I should now have everything that I need. I built like a little like simple 4-wire, you have to add VTEC.
Yeah.
And there was a couple things that I learned doing that. Like when I finally got the car done, it was then down to the wiring. And like the craziest thing that people probably still don't know today is that the connectors on the OBD0 O2 sensors are actually kind of flip-flopped. So you have to take you don't just add the secondary O2 when you're running the OBDO computer. You actually take C16 and I don't remember what it was, but the 2 O2 sensors, and you flip them around and then you add the plug. It's weird because it does this like stutter thing, and then my Will was able to figure that out. Okay. So like the nickname I made for him was Will Power. Like if I couldn't get something off like a bolt, I just like I need some willpower over here.
Did he like it?
I think it caught.
So there it is, Willpower, the teacher.
Yeah.
So before you came up with the nickname, did you call him Will? Like, was it a first name basis, or did you call him like Mr. and then his last name?
I'm very informal with people.
Sure.
I even call
That's
my,
very Caucasian.
I even call my parents by their names. I don't call them.
Yeah, that's a very Caucasian thing.
I know.
I mean, I'm just saying. I don't know anyone who is not Caucasian who calls their parents and their aunts and uncles by their names.
Yeah.
Has it always been like that?
Maybe, yeah, pretty much.
What age were you when you decided you're going to call your mom and your dad by their first name?
Probably 9 or 10.
No.
They were not happy about that, too.
I would. Okay, so it's not like they were okay with it.
But they adjusted.
Okay, you guys, does anyone watching this call their parents by their first name? I don't. What age are you? What culture? What ethnic background? I have to know, because I know a few people who do that. This is one of them, and every one of them is white, and I just have to know if that's a coincidence or if there's something about that.
It's probably not a coincidence.
Okay, so if you guys know, and no digs, I'm really just fascinated by this kind of thing. So you end up doing the swap, you learn all these things, the teacher helps for everything from ball joints to, switching the wires, and but all of the nuances, whether from Brian Gillespie at Hasport, even back then, to reading on Honda Tech, to figuring it out, you got the swap done.
Yeah, and I literally was able to build a whole web page that until probably like 5 years ago was actually like still a pretty important resource online.
Is it still up?
Nah, it's not up.
Oh.
It's probably been 5 to 8 years that it's been down. But for a good 10 years solid, like people were like using that shit.
Yeah, I mean, knowing you, I never saw it, but knowing you, it would have been, pretty broken down pretty well, right?
Like even engine removal would be like, there'd be like a bold section, and then there'd be like a paragraph written about it.
Yeah.
More or less what to do, and then like a picture.
Well, see, so the thing that's really cool about that scenario is, and I'm actually really curious, for all of you watching, for those of you that are young that have never done a swap, do you want to do your own swaps? Do you aspire to like wrench on your own cars and maybe other people's? And I feel like that's a very kind of like common sort of ideal, right?
Yeah.
And then for those of you that have done that, how did you learn? Like, tell us. I don't care if it's like the lengthiest comment ever. Type it out. Like, how did you learn? Did you have a dad? Did he work on other cars and you had tools? Was it a friend? You went to a friend's house? Because I've always wondered, how did people learn, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you learned when you're 30 or when you're 14. I just want to know how you learned.
Yeah, I've heard stories from like a lot of people like seem to float around at shops,
So okay, if a shop's cool enough to let you.
Yeah, exactly. Then you have to have your in at the shop.
Right. My first swap, and it was nowhere near on my own. Just no way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but the people that I was friends with were like, I mean, we never worked on that car before, but we're down, right?
Yeah.
So they would come over after work, and it was like,
to your house.
To the house.
To the house. Yeah.
So what it ended up being was version 2 of my car. So this is 2010.
Version 2 of the Prelude?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So the first time it was in my driveway and we did it that way.
Yeah.
So 2000 and
because you were saying when it was maroon.
I paid.
Okay.
Yeah, I had people do it. I didn't want to. Well, it's not that I didn't want to tackle this. For clarification, I had no tools nor space. Now
I do remember your toolbox.
So the argument could be made: you could always buy tools, but you can't buy space.
Yeah.
Necessarily. And if you don't have a cherry picker, right, etc. So what ended up happening is my boys were a little bit older. Shout out to Ronnie, Jared, remember them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, Ryan, this is a pretty cool connection. Ryan and I became acquainted about that long ago, and he ended up coming down to do the electric portion of version 2 when the car was sitting in the driveway. So not even in a garage. It was in the driveway with a canopy because it was like 105 degrees. It was brutal.
Yeah, I remember coming down and then being like, "Oh, how, did those guys get some more stuff done?
Yeah.
Like, where are they at with this and that?"
So the thing
they
that
were
was
helping
dope
you a
about
lot with that.
Jared and Ronnie helped tremendously for like the simple things of experience. So Jared had an Integra. Jared had worked on that a bunch, so he knew what to do. Ronnie's a fabricator.
Yeah, so he doesn't really matter what kind of
It
car
doesn't
is,
really
he
matter.
just
And so
figures it out.
he's the one who ended up making that custom radiator
Yeah.
with the fill point that went through the core support and the integrated overflow tank. I mean, just still one of the coolest radiators I've ever seen.
The filler went through the overflow
It went through the overflow tank. So if you guys look up pictures, I mean, I'm sure they're out there. There's a couple magazine features. I actually haven't really thought about this in a while. It came up now. But the way the radiator ended up being in that swap was it fit underneath the core support, right? So when you like look down,
we designed the
radiator
portion of it.
Made it a dual pass, inlet, outlet, -16, etc. But there's obviously 100 ways to do an overflow tank and a fill point. Now people do swirl pots and surge tanks and remote fills and stuff like that. But back then it was like, okay, the radiator is gonna sit underneath the core support. Should I do a 90? I mean, back then, if it was custom, it would have been cool. But I was just like, wait a minute. We've got about this much room underneath the core support, which really, I don't know why, because we could have gone higher.
No, because the latch maybe.
Okay, so I could have eliminated the hatch and done hood pins.
Yeah, you could have.
The hood latch ended up being where the T was and braced onto the radiator.
Yeah.
So once you mount the radiator to the car, then the T, it's a little sketch, but there was like a point, and it sat on there, and you tightened it.
Because that was an idea that I'd come up with the CRX.
With your CRX
Remember,
radiator?
I put the radiator, and then the latch T-bar.
Yeah.
I removed the center section.
Yes.
And then the car I'm working on right now actually did the exact same thing.
Yes.
And then you just welded. You take it off, you drill that spot weld. There's a hole right in the middle.
Yep.
And then you just weld the tab, and then you put a bolt.
Yes.
So now your radiator is the support for the T.
Right.
The top of the T of the radiator support.
So in my head back then, it didn't occur to me to do aero catch didn't even exist, and I just wasn't really into hood pins at that point with that car. So the hood latch is the only way, right? And obviously, if you do some type of custom hood mounting now, you don't need the hood latch, right?
Right.
But so what it was is there was this space underneath because of the hood latch and the radiator, right? So you have this much space to the core support, and what we ended up doing was I designed it with Ronnie, and he made the overflow tank to be on top of the radiator. But in the overflow tank, because plumb to it, but in the overflow tank, it looked like it was part of the same thing.
Yeah, but there was a
fill tube, right, was going straight into the radiator, so it went up, and then the cap sat on top of the core support, but it was underneath, and it looked like it was all one thing, but it wasn't. Just a really, really cool piece, a very expensive cooling system.
Oh yeah.
To end up making version 2 of the Prelude what it was. But anyways, that swap, Ronnie had a van. Like the van
a fab van?
No, like the van that if you see driving, you will hold your children closer to you.
Oh.
Like the beat up big white one that has like no windows.
Yeah.
And if you did look into the windshield, there's no seats in the back. Yeah. And you're like, well, is this really just for kidnapping?
It's so he could put welders and shit back there.
Well,
probably.
I don't know what he did with it, but he brought the Big Daddy cherry picker.
Yeah.
Like the huge one. And he backs up to my house, and it just, pull it out. And this is the big one because they're pulling like big old engines with it. And we push it up into the driveway. It was because of Ronnie and that cherry picker. It was because of him and my friend Jared. They're like, all right, so you would need a bolt, like an AC bolt, like one of the big ones. Put it here. You got a chain, make sure the chain's hooked. All the things that, like, if you kind of didn't think about it, you could totally wreck your car.
Yeah.
If it fell on the core support, you would destroy the front. If it fell on the shock tower, you're going to destroy your car or your hand and just lose fingers. And, I mean, of course you think chain, hook, but they were like, no, that last one needs to hook back up so it's on there. And just the stupid little shit.
Because you don't realize things can slide.
Correct.
On you.
Correct. And it was the things like that. They were patient with me. So some of them are only a couple years older than me, but other, they're just more experienced as far as manual labor. And so that's really what ended up happening. I learned the most in that sense. But really dismantling a whole car and just anything and everything was version 3. And it ended up happening here. We can get into that in the next segment. But really, talking about first swaps, I'm actually very interested to know, what was your first swap? How did you learn? Where did you do it? Did any of you guys have like a auto body or auto prep or mechanic classes like that? Because that's a pretty cool story.
Yeah, it's
getting credit, learning in an environment with tools.
It couldn't have been more perfect, to be honest.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. Yeah, I'm in the driveway.
I think about it now, and I'm like, that was very. I had my engine swap handed to me on a silver platter. If you will, like.
I mean, how did you guys do it? Did you buy Harbor Freight tools, or are you guys the type of people who are like, I'm gonna totally get into cars, so I'm gonna buy Snap-on or even Craftsman from the get-go, Matco? Like, what are you guys into? Or were you just like, yo, I'll go to Sears? Remember Sears? I'll go to Craig and AutoZone and buy whatever. I'm just interested to know how you guys did your first swap, because that's a cool thing. I mean, Ryan's is 20 years ago. Mine was, I don't even like to call that mine because I had help, but that's my learning. Mm-hmm. That's how I learned. I have to shout out Ronnie and Jared, because without them, I don't think it would have happened as safely. I think you and I would have done it.
We would have.
But if you're like, you need a cherry picker.
I was also. Well, I mean, we did end up having to buy things, remember, along the way.
Yeah.
I felt like guilty because sometimes I would just like forget a tool because I didn't think we would need it.
Sure.
And I'd be like, oh yeah, I have one at home.
Well, because I had like
500 miles away.
Yeah, because I had like 7 tools.
Yeah, I remember your multi-fold. You still have it with just your standard ass. But you know what? I didn't have that much better.
Okay, so you guys, honestly
I didn't have that much
honestly,
better.
How many of you guys learned with an air compressor or without, right? Because I'm thinking majority of people did not have an air compressor.
Yeah.
So I had a Costco toolbox, tool folding box, right? Had a handle. It was like the 216 piece set for like $100 or whatever, right? And it honestly, it really had everything that you need. 3/4 drive. It had the big, the medium, and the small.
It's like
it had extensions. It had everything.
It's perfect for like a car show toolbox.
Yeah, but if you're trying to like build a car.
I know, but what I'm saying is like, that box that you could fold up, just throw in your trunk.
Yeah.
And then when you're at the show and you're like, I really need a 10, I really need a screwdriver,
yes.
I really need to disconnect my battery or to. It's
like
the perfect toolbox for that.
Dude, but
and
honestly
it does
though,
most of your repair work.
But with the with the 3/4 drive,
yeah,
dude, your suspension.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just cranking it, and I mean, I ended up breaking it after 10 years because I tried to take off head studs. Do you remember this?
I think on that
on one of my spare F20s.
Yeah.
I needed to take off a head stud, I think it was, and I don't remember what, but I was not using a ratchet that you're supposed to be using. And I think I was on the phone with you about something else, and you're like, I think you're going to break it. Do you remember this?
I kind of do.
Okay, dude, yeah. I'm on the phone with Ryan talking to him about something. I'm going to take off this head stud and put it on the other motor. And I think I remember Ryan saying, I'm pretty sure you're going to break that. And I was like, boom, and it's just spinning.
Yeah.
It's just spinning. And I was like, oh, fuck, right?
Internals.
Yeah,
you need something that's not adjustable to break those off.
I wrecked it, right? So that thing lasted 10 years, but I mean, you want to take off 6, 8s, 10s, 12s, 14s, 17s. It fucking had all of them, right? And your Torx bits for like those weird ass screws, and it had, you're trying to take a dash apart. It had all the little Phillips, the little heads you needed. I mean, I made it work. I mean, to this day, look, Ryan has built a lot of cars in his shop, but the tools that you have here are like borderline laughable because they're everything that you need, but it is not fancy. When we were doing my car for SEMA, which I'm going to get into that in detail, we used an air compressor like 4 times. Other than that, straight hand, man. And I got a couple of friends who are mechanics who actually think they feel like it's cheating when they use an air compressor because they learned like in the gutter, like garage wrenching, and they're like, I don't even like to use that.
Dan?
No, Dan uses a compressor.
Okay.
Dan uses a fucking compressor. Shout out to Dan from WordWorks. No, Dan's like,
Okay.
no, he'll use a compressor all day. But I have a couple of friends that are just like, man, if I can do it by hand, other than like an axle nut. I mean, I've spent a lot of time trying to take it. I spent a lot of time trying to take an axle nut off in the most ridiculous way ever, like jumping on it.
Yeah.
Trying to like throw something at the because I took off the
They
jack.
Be a nightmare.
Yeah, I took off the jack tube.
Yeah.
I know.
And then
as a breaker bar, and I was like hitting it with a rock. I was standing on it. I'm a big dude even back then, and it would not budge. And my friend's like, dude, you need an air compressor. I don't have one. So he brought like the big snap-on one with a fat battery, and he hit it for like a while. It might have been EJ. It might have been EJ. Shout out to EJ. But anyways, man, I learned a lot from reading and Honda Tech, like Ryan was talking about. But truthfully, the only way to really learn is you just have to do it. You're gonna cross-thread something. You're probably gonna slam your knuckles and like hurt yourself. But that's the only way, because you can read and watch all you want, but if you don't do it, you won't do it. So shout out to my boys that helped, and to your teacher Willpower, who helped you learn how to do it. And so in the comments, I mean, it's only the first segment, but I'm genuinely fascinated. How did you guys learn how to swap or pull your coilover? The first time you wanted to pull suspension to put in coilovers, how did you do it? I know a lot of guys figured it out and then were like burning out their bushings because nobody had a press, right? Did you guys burn out your bushings? Do you still burn out your bushings? I'm just really interested to know. And so we're talking about 15, 20 years ago. And I'm pretty sure that there's been a lot of cars and a lot of stories. So when we come back, we'll talk about a little bit closer to home, right? A little bit newer, because a lot has changed in 20 years.
Yeah.
Right? A lot has changed, and there's so many more places for information and knowledge, and it's actually funny, some of the stuff that we do, the way we do it, you wouldn't really think we're in 2020.
Yeah.
Because we do it kind of old school.
Yeah.
Like, I want to talk about Bendy McBenderson, which when we come back, we'll get into Bendy McBenderson and what the hell that even means, okay? All right, we'll see you guys in a little bit. Think Bigger podcast. This is a branch of the Think Bigger project that is a brand and a movement and an ideology that was created to better the community and the culture around it. How you behave in your relationships, how you build a car, how you do anything comes from the way that you think. And if you can start there, then everything else will follow.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Ryan from Rywire here, and today I have something really, really cool to show you. What I want to show you guys is that nothing that I'm doing here is so far-fetched that you guys can't do it at home. We don't have any CNC, there's no 5-axis machine here. I'm literally just using my brain and hand tools to get a really, really cool project done. Even in the most basic conditions, a beautiful outcome can arise.
All right, guys, welcome back to Car Talk. In the first segment, we were talking about the stories, reminiscing car stories, which we all love to tell each other, but we went back far. Ryan went back 20 years, I went back, 12, 15 years, and I mentioned Bendy McBenderson, and right. I know you guys are like, what the hell is that? So, we mentioned it before. I got a hold of Ryan maybe, a good 15 years ago, or I don't really remember, and we became pretty cool pretty quickly. And he used to drive down from NorCal when he lived up there to be a part of this Prelude build, because he already had an idea of what I was doing, and I think there was a part of you that realized that it was going to be pretty special.
Yeah. And
version 2 ended up being a really big deal, and so, a lot of you guys will probably remember that. So the Chronicles, we did this exclusive build thread, but on his blog.
Yeah, Joey used to do he probably did three cars like that or something. But
I actually don't remember. Mine was the first
one. Where it's
it was 25 parts.
Let me cover it, and it'd be a part.
Yeah.
So people were following these updates.
Yeah, and it really helped. It really helped the people learn about it.
So it was pre-IG. It was pre.
Chronicles had just started.
There may have been MySpace back then.
Maybe Friendster, MySpace. I don't remember because I wasn't on them. But you know what? It was really cool, you know. And so I used to have a small digital camera,
Yeah.
and actually all those photos I took them, and then Joey posted them on the Chronicles until the car came out, and then they were his photos, and it was a really cool process. But part of that process, as we mentioned in the first segment, shout out to my friend Ron, Jared, EJ, Jimmy, and Linda from Praxis. They came by, and people really helped in little places and sometimes a lot of ways to make that happen. But one of the people was Ryan. So Ryan was already doing these electronics, and you would come down. Ryan would come down, you guys, from Northern California, like 500 miles, and we would talk on the phone, and we would figure out what we were gonna work on that day. That weekend.
Yeah, that weekend.
And he would come down. He would work his work until like, 2 or 3 p.m. on a Friday, and then just beeline down. Sometimes 5-6 p.m. and he would come down to my place. 6-hour drive, 5.5 6-hour drive, and he would come on a Friday night, and we would work blazing hot. The car's outside in direct heat. For Saturday and half a Sunday, and then he would drive all the way back to NorCal, and that's kind of a testament to his willingness to work ethic, etc. But to get to the point of Bendy McBenderson, okay, I didn't have a lot of tools, you guys. I had that basic stuff. I borrowed stuff, but I learned then how people were about their tools.
Yeah.
Especially the people who bought quality ones. Nobody really wants to lend that shit out. Right? Because they're afraid they're never going to get it back. So nobody really wanted to lend me, like, big stuff, right? Like a 10 mil, right? Which is I probably contributed to lost 10 mils. But, like, big stuff, wireless, cordless drivers and things like that. That's a lot of money,
I didn't even have any of that.
Yeah, and so Ryan would actually bring some stuff down. I would end up having to buy, like, a socket and a ratchet and an extension.
Here and
individual
there.
pieces, just to... Because it was my first time learning how to, like, pull a valve cover, pull an alternator, take off a starter, just basic stuff. I just never done it, right? And one day, Ryan and I used to get kind of delirious, okay? 102, 105 degrees summer. We might be under a canopy, but, depending on where the sun is during that time of the day,
energy drinks,
it's just hitting us. So we used to drink energy drinks, and there was something about the energy drinks that would just make us kind of delirious, right? Maybe because we're younger and we don't drink them that often. But when we drank them, we were like, oh, it's only 100. Let's go, Just dripping sweat. But we would totally wrench on the car. And one day, Ryan, there's a picture of it on the Chronicles. If you guys look up Big Mike's Prelude Rebuild on the Chronicles, or Google Big Mike's Prelude Rebuild Chronicles, you're going to see part 1 to 25.
You're going to see this.
And in one picture, you're going to see who I have ended up naming Bendy McBenderson, okay? I don't really know why. I mean, well, Bendy, but the McBenderson, I gave him a last name when we were doing my car for SEMA, which we'll get to.
Do you want to hold it?
Thank you. Now, you guys. Okay, it takes some amount of effort to get this to bend. I mean, this isn't a Snap-on or like lifetime warranty.
It's a proto.
It's a proto.
And I think it's actually of quality.
I
Because
mean,
look at it's not even a half-inch drive, and it's still here today.
Okay, you've had this at least 18 years.
I've had it. Okay, so I have had it for over 20.
Over 20.
And my grandfather had it for probably
this one, Bendy.
Yeah, yes.
Bendy's been in your family from your grandfather. I did not know. I did not know this at all.
No, all my Snap-on. I have some Snap-on wrenches.
Yes.
And they are engraved Cuesta College.
Okay.
Because my grandfather taught there, and then they were getting new tools, so they were having like a auction or whatever.
Yeah.
And he had bought them, and then when he passed, I got all of his tools, and my dad explained to me, oh, they say Cuesta because
very cool.
Anyways, so that was one of the wrenches. This has to at least be 30 years old.
Okay, it has a good weight to it. It does not feel cheap at all. And when you shake it, you don't feel or hear innards just like flopping around. It's a sturdy guy. And when Ryan brought it, I remember we were like delirious in the heat. And I was like, did I just fucking bend this right now? And he's like, no, I don't think so. I think it was like that. And we didn't even know. And I felt bad. But have you thought about how you did this?
Yeah.
Okay, how did you do this?
So I have all these props. This pipe,
Dude, that looks mad sketch.
I believe that this is the pipe. It's not the right size.
At
This
all.
is probably why it bent so easily.
Yeah.
Is what ended up happening. I think I was taking off like a lower control arm, like 17 millimeter
Yeah.
bolt. And obviously this is the wrong tool to use.
For sure.
Like, you would at least need something like, at least
a
like
quality
this,
piece.
which this is like, you know, now that I've officially made it, I was able to afford
A Craftsman?
Craftsman.
But, you know, I wouldn't want a hinge neck one when you're taking off a suspension bolt.
Yeah, that's true.
But
Anyway, so that was
that's
just
a
an
nice
example.
solid piece right
That
there.
was just an example. But so I didn't have all that fancy shit, right? So I had this little ass pro toe, and to be able to make this longer, because you know
You
can
need a
only
breaker.
use so much leverage.
Yeah.
So I had this pipe, and this is the same pipe that
That
I
you
had in my
bent it?
toolbox. I believe this is the pipe that I literally used it, and it bent it. Like, you could see how like
Yeah.
like
You guys, I don't know, this might not seem like it's even remotely interesting, but I mean, Bendy had helped me learn how to wrench on my Prelude with my friends. Bendy's been in his family apparently for this long, and we were just talking about in the first segment how, you know, I used to take a jack, like take off that little screw that holds the top piece of the jack handle, because it was a pretty sturdy piece, and we would use that as like a breaker bar. But dude, Bendy, you guys, check out the Chronicles, find it. I don't remember what part.
it's old though.
It
has
is.
to be, like,
You gotta check it out. But I just took a picture of it, and it was just like, you know, he made like Joey made some kind of funny caption, but you know that right there is an example of, you know, he used the pipe. I mean, that looks like a straight up piece of a pipe bomb, bro. That's what that looks like. Sketchy, right? Anyways, and so you know, really, learning how to find a breaker bar, right? Taking like an extension of some kind and like trying to get out an axle nut or something. You got to find all the little tricks, you know. But I mean, have you ever cross-threaded or rounded out an axle nut?
Yeah, because I was being stupid and didn't realize, like, you know, when it gets stuck in there and you need to hammer it out to
Okay.
unseat it from the knuckle, like in the hub bearing assembly. If you hit it directly from the front, you end up mushrooming it.
Okay.
And then if you mushroom it, you go to eventually get it off, and you go to try to pull it out, and then it's getting hung up on the. See what I'm saying?
On the mushroom.
Yeah. So then you can't, like, you can get it out, but you can't get a nut back on it.
So what did you do?
So what I ended up doing in that case, because it was early on, I was like, oh well, I'm an idiot. What you should do is thread a nut back on that you don't care about, and then hit there so it protects the threads.
Okay.
And then you take that nut off, you put your new one on when you put your new axles in. Anyway, what I ended up doing was I just took a grinder,
Yeah.
and I just ground down the mushroom part of it off the tip of the axle, and then just hoped I could get it started, and then because the thread, there's a lot of threads, you sacrifice some threads, but then you still have plenty to work with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I ended up
So that's what you ended up doing. So I've never rounded out an axle nut, but I've done it in a bunch of other places, and you know, you just don't realize you're like turning too hard, spin, or it's not seated properly, or the worst is really screws, like Phillips heads. Like if you don't have the right one, or it's too pointy instead of fat, and you spin it, you just fuck up the Phillips screw, and you're just like, you know, that's drama, you know? But this is all part of the learning experience. Like, what about you guys? Have you guys ever done that to an axle nut, to a 17 for your suspension? And then how did you get it out? Did you drill? I know some people that have been so stuck, they had someone come and tack on it so they could just spin it out,
That
right?
works well. And then now there's all these creative tools to like get stuff out.
Yeah.
Which like I really need to look into.
Yeah.
Just Google like what the best tools are for like getting out strip bolts and
Yeah.
stuff, and then just like buy them. And
Yeah,
just
it's
have
true.
them. Because then it's like you. But honestly, my bailout is belayed next door. They like have all that shit. So
Oh, I see.
whenever I'm working on stuff, I just like go over there and just like.
See,
grab
that's
tools.
really cool, man. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
it's all part of the learning experience, right? And I've always like, you know, we were talking about in the first segment, like, how did you guys learn? Where did you learn? We learned about where Ryan learned. I talked about how I learned. I mean, knowing how to do little things, change your oil, if you have a flat tire. But I'm talking about pulling an engine where you feel comfortable pulling an engine. And to this day, I won't crack open a transmission. I know people that specialize in that. I just won't crack open the transmission, right? I've watched my boy James, shout out to James, right, from Ghostworks. I've watched him crack one open in every little piece and just laying it out, knowing how everything goes back together. It's pretty gnarly, right, to see the ring and pinion and gears and synchros and all that stuff, right? I mean, have you ever done a trans?
With friends.
With friends, right?
Like Aaron, fat kid.
Yeah, fat
from
kid.
next door.
Yeah.
Fat kid is his alias. Anyway, he did the quaif with me,
Yeah.
and that was interesting because that was a sequential.
And but that's the first time. Is that the first time you'd ever cracked a bell housing?
Oh no, I've done it before.
Okay, you've done it before.
Yeah.
So I've to this day I've never done a trans. I've never just opened it up and messed with it. Right? I mean, I've seen them opened in front of me. I've never done it, and I've definitely never taken them all apart. Right? I think transmission works pretty gnarly. I mean, I know a lot of guys who can do both, but I can't. Right? So I think that's pretty cool that you've also done that.
I've taken it apart and I've like inspected things and replaced like basic stuff. Like on a K20, I randomly had that shifter linkage piece. There's like a bolt. I don't know how it came apart, but it literally undid itself, and I just like pulled the whole thing out of the transmission. It went great.
Yeah.
So then I had to pull it all apart. I had to put all that back together and fix it. So luckily I didn't have to mess with a gear set.
Yes.
It was like something else. So I pulled it apart. We fixed it. I did it.
Have you ever pulled open an automatic transmission?
No.
Have you guys ever done that? Because automatics are like a whole different kind of thing.
Yeah,
right?
I wouldn't even bother.
90s Honda automatic
so
trans were like never really that good. They didn't quite last that long. Well, except for one of my beaters. That thing has a ridiculous amount of miles. I have 401,000 miles on an OEM Honda 90s automatic transmission.
That's pretty crazy.
That's unheard of. And it finally went, because now I have about 406 on the car, but I think I broke the 400,000 mile mark with the original automatic transmission. So anyways, you guys saw Bendy, it's just a funny thing, man. I think the last name came from when we all got delirious.
Oh yeah, there's been a lot of nickname and clever things that we've came up with.
But I mean, you guys, don't you do that with the homies? You get together in the garage or at the shop. For those of you that have shops, I mean, it's like a camaraderie, homie,
sleep deprivation.
Yeah, love, hate, fun, kind of like relationship with each other and the cars and everything, right? I mean, if you're just doing regular R&R, if you work at a shop where it's just maintenance work, I suppose that's pretty monotonous, right? But I mean, if you get to do any custom stuff and whatever, that's pretty fun, I mean, over the years, there's just a ton of stories. I mean, we're talking about wrenching and learning how to wrench and Ryan's first swap and first car. My first car we talked about in a previous episode, my EG, but I'm going to just go ahead and embarrass myself and put it out there. So I really kind of didn't really know how to drive stick when I bought my first car, which was my EG.
And this is what year? Approximately.
Summer of 2000?
Okay.
Summer of 2000. Okay, so I had a friend who let me drive. It was the EJ Coupe. I mean, just stock, but he just happened to have a Honda. And he's like, yeah, I don't care, man. Go ahead. So he gave me a couple lessons, just trying to ride the choke point so you don't buck. And I was terrible at it, and like we all were.
And then your legs like quivering because you're a little scared. So
you don't want to jerk, and then the person's in the passenger seat like, dude, I'm getting queasy because you're like shaking so much. So shout out to the homie there. This was 99 2000. So I had enough idea, but I'm pretty sure if I was stuck on a hill, right in traffic, I would have been fucked. I'm pretty sure, but it was in a parking lot. It's flat, so I knew how to get into first. And like if you can shift decently, once you get on the freeway, if you don't hit traffic, right, you're kind of just sitting in fifth, right? And then I would just put it into neutral to decelerate and just hit the brake until it was time to get to the light. And then I was like, all right, you got to do first. Go into first, right? So this is what I was doing. I was 18, right? But it got to the point where I had money saved up and I wanted to buy a car. And I wanted an EG. 92 to 95 Civic, 5th gen, etc. And so I ended up going to buy a test drive one from Pretty sure it was Auto Trader. I think Auto Trader was like the big. Auto Trader's
yeah,
still
that's
around.
right. Everybody would
But
buy those
Auto
cars.
Trader, right? And I remember the test drive. The person who I bought it from rode with me, right? Because they're not gonna just let some random brown dude get in the car. I'm gonna test drive it, right? So they rode with me, and honestly, I genuinely to this day have no recollection on how I drove it without them realizing that I'm not good at stick. I don't remember stalling. I don't remember shuddering or bucking the car. I just knew that I had driven stick maybe like 10 times before that.
Mhm.
And their area was, up and down. I don't know how I got them to think that I knew what I was doing. Okay? But I
Yeah.
didn't ruin anything. I didn't burn the clutch. So it was a short test drive. And we get the car back, and then I realized I ended up buying it. I mean, I paid I think I paid 5,000. They were asking like 54.
You just felt bad at that point because you felt like you hurt it so badly that I have to buy it now. Maybe that was their strategy.
Maybe it was their strategy.
I'm
Okay,
just
maybe
kidding.
they knew what they were doing. I don't know, but I remember I was like, I tried to go into the fours, and they were like, no. Which I'm pretty sure if I was like, well, here's 45, right? But I didn't know. I was young, man. But I ended up getting 400 off, right? I think it was.
Yeah.
Bought the car, and I was so nervous. I was 18, first car, and the drive back home where I was living was not so simple as as this test drive. So I ended up having the person that I was with have to drive the car that I just bought home because I think I was gonna just burn it out or just stall too many times. I was nervous.
Yeah.
And then I ended up practicing in like the streets until I became good at it.
Like just around your house and stuff.
The parking lots
Yeah.
and all right, let's go to the store and it's just like fuck, all right, And anyways,
Psych
luckily,
yourself up for it.
well, yeah, luckily I didn't burn out the clutch that came with the car. Where then it would have been this amount of money because I didn't know how to work on it. A clutch job would have cost hundreds and hundreds, and whatever. So, anyways, this is 20 years ago, and I ended up just being willing to admit right now that I couldn't even drive my own EG home. I mean, I probably could have, but I didn't, and I had to teach myself over the next like 2 to 3 weeks every day until until stick's now like second nature, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so how did you guys learn? Pops, your father, older brother, friends? Did you just buy a manual and teach yourself? How did you guys learn how to drive stick? How did you learn how to drive stick?
The car that I was driving for like my driver's license permit test or my test,
Yeah.
just happened to be a car that my dad had from his girlfriend at the time, and it was just a good candidate for me to drive because it was a car. My dad had like a truck.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna use that car. So I just had to like learn. If I wanted my license, I only
Because
car
that
I
was
had.
the only car you had.
Yeah, and it happened to be a manual, so I had to learn how to drive it.
Am I the only person who caught him say his dad's girlfriend?
My dad's girlfriend.
Like, was he not with your mom anymore, or
Yeah,
did
he
he
was
also
not.
have a girlfriend?
No, he wasn't with my mom at
Okay.
that
So,
point.
not that this really should matter. I just
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it was
anyways,
my dad's girlfriend
you-
that had it.
You had to learn
Mm-hmm.
because your pop said you can use this car,
Yeah.
but you
Or
needed-
she did or whatever.
Someone
Use
did.
it. Yeah.
And so you just taught yourself.
Yeah.
No one else
Well,
sat.
no, my dad showed me like.
Okay, passenger
he
seat,
sat,
ride.
He sat with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. And how long do you think it took you to really just feel comfortable shifting on a hill, all that?
Maybe like really comfortable, maybe 10 different drives or something.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, it took me a couple weeks, probably
Yeah.
like 10 to 14 times.
Yeah.
And then like the safe thing to do when you don't know the choke point is to just like flood it.
Yeah.
You're like, ugh, that's what I had to do a couple of times.
And then every car that you're learning how to drive, this one's really hard.
Yes.
Like everybody will tell you, oh well, yeah, that car's really hard to drive.
Yes.
It's like, well, which one's easy then?
Which
Because
one's
they're all
easy?
fucking hard to drive.
I mean, I ended up getting a CRX only like 3 years later that had a 6-puck unsprung. So if you ever needed to like be punched in the head about how to drive and learn the grab point on a hill, it's with a 6-puck unsprung because you're either gonna stall or you're gonna like break your own neck.
Yeah, I don't. Do they even make those anymore?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I mean, why not?
Because people do like twin disc and stuff now instead. I guess.
I still don't think twin discs are that affordable.
It's like $1,500 or something.
I'm pretty sure a regular clutch with like a full face disc is like $280. So 1,500. Do you guys have twin discs? I'm pretty sure people are still running like 6-puck sprung, 6-puck unsprung. You know, like ACT and all those ones. What kind of clutch are you guys running in your setup? Drag, street, daily? Who do you use and why do you use them? That's a really good one. So let us know because I use a twin disc, but I have graduated and spent time and money to necessitate a twin disc, right? You don't need a twin disc when you're just driving a D16. Right? That would just be a very odd choice of money spending.
Yeah.
But anyways, so that's kind of something that that's a story that not too many people know, is that I literally couldn't even drive my own EG home, and I learned after the fact, really, right? And so Pops taught you, and then you figured it out. You did the driving test. I did my driving test when I was 16 with an automatic, so I was chilling. But you did it with stick.
I thought, I should just do it.
Yeah.
And it's like an accomplishment at that point. Like
Yeah.
when you told your friends when you were in like high school, whatever. Yeah.
Oh, I know how to drive manual?
No, you're like, oh, I'm taking my
Oh.
driving test in a manual. They're like, damn.
Damn, exactly. Look, man, everyone's got different situations, right? It's cool that he had a dad, and then the dad and the girlfriend, here's something that you can use. I know some of you guys probably didn't have a car, right? Like, I didn't have a father to do that, and I had to save up money, and that's why it was when I was 18, not 16 or 17, because I had to buy my own car, and how I didn't even really know how to drive stick, because there was no one there to really teach me, right? And I'm pretty sure that there's going to be people who relate to that. Some of you might be like, what the hell, man? Like, everyone had a pops or an older brother. I didn't, So it's an interesting kind of thing, and I'm actually super interested how you guys learn. But after you learned, was it because it was your family kind of car that you were respectful to it, or were you like redlining and shifting and driving like a crazy man?
No, that car was dangerous, dude. Like,
it was like falling apart.
Oh yeah, like it would literally like the igniter or something would. I don't even remember to this day like what the problem was.
Yeah.
But when you were driving the car, it would shut off.
What?
And I remember like multiple times I'd be driving it to school.
The whole thing would just turn off.
The car would just die.
So how did you restart it?
I had to really quickly push on the clutch.
Yes.
And I had
Turn
to
the key
unlock
off.
the
Yeah.
steering wheel.
Yeah.
Because literally you'd be like, oh shit, I'm going to the curb, right?
Yes.
And I'd have to just turn the key, wiggle it really fast.
You put it in third and drop the clutch?
Unlock the steering wheel. Yeah, and then I would just put it into gear and I'd pop the clutch.
And it would
just like
kick
keep
it back
going.
on.
Yeah, I wouldn't go on the highway with it because it was not.
That's very dangerous.
Oh, it was fucking stupid, basically.
Yeah, that's very sketchy.
And I think that we were able to get it to start running a little bit better before I took. No, wait, it would have been after the driving test. So I probably drove the car for several months, and then I bought my first CRX.
Okay.
But then that first CRX was carbureted, so it had its own problems.
Yes.
Before it got warm, the first stop sign, the first 3 or 4
die.
stop signs in the morning, it would die.
Yeah.
So I'd have to be like revving it as I'm cruising up to the. I'd put it in neutral and I'd just be revving it
to keep it from dying.
And then I'd pop it into gear and just like go.
Well, like I learned the same kind of thing, not carbureted, but like the first time I learned what an IACV was.
Yeah.
And if the idle was all messed up, you could like turn the screw a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And that's when it was just like idling too high, or if you went too low, it would just shut off. So I mean, I kind of figured that stuff out. Or the first time I needed to change the IACV. When you hear the older Hondas are like, the first time that happened to one of my cars, I was like, my engine's about to blow. Like, I didn't know, right? And someone was like, they probably still taxed me. They were like, oh, I'll fix that. It's just a couple $100. And I was like, oh, okay, all right.
They just took it off, cleaned it
They probably just cleaned it. But I mean, even if you had to buy a new one from the dealer, how much is an IACV?
I don't know.
I don't remember. But I don't think it was a couple $100.
No.
But hey, I thought my shit was about to blow up. So when someone's just like, I can fix that for a couple $100, I was like, Thanks, man. So you live and you learn, man. You live and you learn. Now we don't even use IACVs on any of the stuff that we use.
Now, especially with drive-by-wire throttle bodies, it's really nice.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, the story. I mean, the story time could go on forever. And I mean, right now we're, still 10 years ago. And there's just so many.
That's true. We didn't make it too far.
Yeah, but I mean, it's all good, you guys. As always, we always talk about this. Ryan and I. This is about communication. Share with us your stories. Honestly, we're in an era where it's as quick of a comment, one sentence. Man, take your time, type it out, right? Tell us the whole story. And in future episodes, we'll do a recap on some of the more interesting stories that you guys tell us in the comments. How did you learn how to drive stick? How did you guys learn how to wrench? What were your first tools? Are you a Snap-on guy, a Craftsman, a Matco? What's the one from
Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh. I have a lot of Pittsburgh individuals from Harbor Freight.
I have some too.
Hey, listen, man, they work, right? I wouldn't buy like the over-the-top joints, but Pittsburgh. How many of you guys are rocking Pittsburgh tools? Let us know, like dead serious, right? We want to know. Share with us in the comments if you think that you've done the same thing, breaker bar, floor jack handle. How have you guys taken off difficult bolts? Did you guys spray it with like PV blaster or WD-40? Did you take a heat gun to it? What are the tricks that you guys have learned to get off stubborn bolts, axle nuts, 17s, anything? And then we'll read it, and we will definitely do a recap and pick out some of those, and we'll talk about some of your guys' stories. What do you think about that?
Sounds good.
All right, so you guys, we appreciate you being here. Like, comment, subscribe, as everyone says, and we'll grow. Car Talk will grow, and please continue to comment. It's not about, I'm not just saying that. We actually want to read the comments. We want to know the stories, and if you have ideas for other topics you want us to talk about, by all means, let us know, and we will certainly plan for it. So we appreciate you guys joining us for another episode of Car Talk.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you guys at the next one.